Hello, hello. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos where I just kind of ramble at my microphone and talk about something I find interesting or at least worth talking about for a minute or two. And today, one that's been on my mind was the problems with the current industry for games and what I think its future might look like. So, I guess let's just get into it. Everyone knows at this point about the failure of Concord, a $200 million disaster where the game was barely live for 2 weeks. And 200 million is just the publicly acknowledged figure. It's probably higher to $300 or $400 million. We're seeing Highguard, it's getting shut down, and at time of recording, I think 2 days, which puts it at a lifetime of about 5 weeks. I don't think that that's necessarily a mark against the game itself, but we'll get into that later. But I'd be a disappointment to my professors if I brought 2 examples, so I'll also bring in Marathon. It's showing the same signs of decay in terms of player base and returning users that Highguard was, at a kind of rate that I don't think that they'll survive. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but one of the big ones is consumer trends. The player base themselves. And the delays between trends, the player base and its wants, and the companies getting there. That delay causes more problems than anything else. Back when Marathon started development, for example, which I know was like 6 or 7 years ago, in terms of extraction shooters, there was, Tarkov? And that was it. Now there's not just Tarkov. So they have a lot more competition. And players are already found the games that they're going to stick with. And why would they change? They've already got the game with all their friends and all their progress, so there's no sense in upending it just because something new came along. Now, I know I mentioned a red market. That's one of the bigger problems with modern games. They're acting on this idea that if they release it, the player base will come. They won't. That's become very clear with recent examples that I've already mentioned, among others, and some that still appear to be in the pipe. With the delay between them deciding on a project and the project coming out, when everyone wants to chase the same design trends, everyone runs into the same problem. With games, especially online games, it's first come, first serve. And you are absolutely spoiled for choice nowadays. Do you want an extraction shooter, a multiplayer shooter, a team-based game, a shooter MOBA? There's deadlock for that. I don't know if there's any real competition for it right now. But you got a Battle Royale, Apex, Fortnite, PUBG, whatever other 1000th game you can find that your buddies can play. You've got hero shooters, you've got Overwatch and Paladins and Apex again, realistically. And there's so many options, and those are just the big ones that I can name off the top of my head, that you just can't really get into the market when it's that crowded. You either have to come in and be the best at literally everything and do it for a price point that everyone would be okay with, or you have to accept that you're not going to succeed. Not to say that you shouldn't try. I applaud those who do. But I won't say that I'm surprised when their big ambitious title doesn't make it. Because they're launching into a market that's already saturated with big ambitious titles that have been there for a year or 2 already and have all the players. But I think I should mention the players. and the fact that most of them probably can't afford your new game anyways. With the usage of controversial AI tools, especially when it comes to assets like textures, models, voice acting, and how prevalent it's becoming, it's going to be harder and harder for these companies to break into the market while using them. Platforms are beginning to add disclosures. I know Steam does it. I've heard rumblings that itch.io and GameJolt are going to add it, though those are mostly indie, so it's not nearly as big of a thing. But especially with Steam, players see the usage of AI-generated assets, and they're gonna dip. Players generally don't want it, but the industry of AI will tell you that they do all damn day. That's their whole business model, is just lying to companies to get them to continue. And it's AI exactly that makes these games so hard to play. Between bad vibe coding practices, or just poor optimization because of complacency, using integrated systems in the engine isn't a bad idea. The problem is, are those systems any good? And unfortunately, the answer is generally going to be no. Plus, with all that bad optimization, players are expected to have better and better hardware to run these games on, which isn't generally available anymore. It's AI's fault for that too. I made a whole video on it, a 5-minute rundown of why you can't afford a computer. The long and short of it is, AI has driven the price of computer parts so high that the players of games generally can't afford to play games anymore. At least not the new ones. Not because they're so incredibly high resolution, high fidelity that it's just too much, but because somebody decided at some point in the coding of the LOD system that it was going to recheck every single CPU tick. So it's rechecking hundreds of thousands of times a second, if not more, for no reason. That's an exaggeration. I'm not big into optimizing performance. There's other people on here that'll talk about it. They generally talk about overdraw, upscaling, and was it TSR? I can't remember. But there's plenty of videos you can find on YouTube that'll explain it far better than I could. What I'm here to say is a modern computer capable of running some of these big dollar games at a high frame rate and most importantly, I should say, a stable frame rate, is thousands. Like a computer or a new used car kind of pricing. I parted out my computer before this, and I built it a few years ago, and I built it through incremental upgrades. If I were to build it from scratch right now, I'd pay nearly $7,000, and I can promise you I did not pay that when I built it. The price has gone up, the availability's gone down, and games expect you to have these high dollar, low volume, hard to find components. And that's just a risk players aren't willing to take anymore. At least when it comes to the price of games. A lot of people will just accept that their hardware is good enough to run the games that they like, and that's all that matters. Because generally players aren't willing to take the risk on new games. Some still are, that's for certain, but not all of them. And what you end up with is these games that come out, they know they're not going to get more players. Their development costs have gone up. Their player install numbers generally haven't gone up in proportion. And every game is a gamble where they bet it all on green. Because it's either we make all the money in the world or we lose everything. It's just the ethos of modern game design, unfortunately. But to try and offset that, games are being priced higher and higher. On top of that, microtransactions, seasonal events, and battle passes, and all these other things that players don't tend to like that much. They like the rewards, but maybe not the rest of it, especially not the pricing. You'll pay $60, $70, $80, $90, $100 for a game, only to then see, like with Monster Hunter Wilds, I'll use that one as my example. It's been, like a year and a half. I just checked the Steam store page. There's almost $600 worth of nickel and diming DLCs. It's an unacceptable quantity for a game that came out, and at least if you're like me, and you really enjoy Monster Hunter, cost a couple $100. Not a couple hundred, like 120 or something. I think I got the deluxe premium or whatever for 120 bucks. That's a lot of money. And I'll be honest, I liked it. I've always been the kind of guy to push power on my computer, so I was able to play it decently well. I know a friend of mine who also likes Monster Hunter a fair amount, but can't push power on his computer all the way like I can. Took one look at it, tried to play it, at least when it was the beta where he could play for free, and really just couldn't. He couldn't see what the monsters were doing because of poor optimization in LODs. The same computer that can run for him high to ultra settings on Monster Hunter World at a stable 100 FPS went into Wilds and couldn't render the monsters in full resolution, and somehow the game's LOD system decided that the proper solution is the 9 triangle version of these monsters. So the game was just literally unplayable for him. When, to be fully honest, it shouldn't be. It's aggressively, moderately playable on my hardware. And I'm running a 3090 and 128 gigabytes of RAM. And it's moderately playable on top settings. That's just a problem. And it's a big risk. Especially for consumers who their money doesn't go as far and they don't make as much. So, what's coming from the future? A lot more of the same, to be honest. With the delay between market trends and game releases, I can say with pretty much full certainty that whatever's down the pipe already isn't going to change substantially. There are going to be companies who are too invested in big multiplayer game projects, whether it's shooters or fighting games. Okay, I'm not going to get anyone's hopes up. It's going to be a bunch of trend-chasing shooters. You're going to see probably a few more big releases, whether that's another High Guard, another Concord, or another Marathon, where they come out, they're fairly generic looking, or have a good style, but mediocre gameplay, or they could be great games all around, but they just don't have any space in the market, and they get suffocated out and die in a month or two. And that's just the state of things. Some of those projects, especially if Marathon does die like I'm predicting, will be retooled before launch into something less reliant on player numbers. How successful that'll be is anyone's guess. But that's the... Hopefully that turns out that way and it works. I can't promise it will, but I can say that I hope it does for some of these people, because they generally don't deserve failure simply because they bet on the wrong horse that looked right when they place their bet. My hope is that this turns into a reversion to more single-player titles. What we've seen with recent trends is single-player or offline experiences get degraded time and time in favor of the theoretically larger profits that can be made from online games, especially online-only games with battle passes and microtransactions and the whole shebang. I'm hoping that the industry runs out of space for multiplayer games, and they realize that they've run out of space for multiplayer games, and it moves towards more single-player titles with complex and rich stories that people will do analysis videos on. It's always, at least to me, been the best part of games and their communities, especially the ones that I care about the most or find the most interesting. There's something to be said there, I suppose. But the best part has always been the story and the community aspect of listening to people who put together these huge interweaving narratives that are set up across the map and hidden in a way where eventually you can plot together the next story of the sequel. And you can find these little hints, and you'll see somebody come out 2 years after the sequel comes out and go, holy shit, it was there the whole time and we just didn't see it. And it'll reignite players and a whole wave of new players to go out and purchase these older but still available, still playable titles and kind of reinvigorate them and be a sales bump to the companies. That's kind of been gone away from, especially by Western developers, who are always chasing the biggest cash payout with the most longevity. And single-player games aren't that. But with how many games want that big continuous cash flow and the longevity of recurring minor purchases in games, you're gonna see that the only place left to go is either out of game development or into single player. What that'll look like? Well, I've got some speculations, and the first one I feel is pretty reasonable. I think Xbox dies in the next 5 years. I like their controllers. They're the ones that I use. I think the Ergo is better. It's the one that I played before moving over to PC fully. But I don't think it's long for the world. They've been consistently losing market share to Sony and the PlayStations. And as of recent, both PlayStation and Xbox have been losing significant market share to PC gaming, especially with Steam becoming continuously better and implementing new features for the players. I think within 5-10 years, Xbox will disappear. I don't know if that'll be good or bad, but I think it will be, at the very least, different. From there, I don't think Sony's really going anywhere. They've got enough studios that still do high-quality single-player stuff or lower-budget games that sell well enough that I think they'll be sticking around for a while. Obviously, Nintendo's never going anywhere. They've got a captive audience, even if that audience does seem like it's being held at gunpoint more often than not. And, yeah, I think PC gaming is going to kind of become the future of it, as installing games and managing them and everything else becomes easier for the average person to do and do consistently. From there, I couldn't really guess. I don't think we'll see some VR revolution anytime soon, unfortunately, as much fun as VR is. Until someone comes out with some new, never-before-seen way of playing VR, I don't think we're going to see some big shakeup in the VR industries. But I think I've rambled enough for one Tuesday morning at like 2 a.m. I hope you guys enjoyed. Still trying to figure out the whole intro-outro thing. But, yeah. Thanks for sticking around. Let me know what your predictions are for the future of games. Do the YouTube pleasantries, the liking, and the subscribing. I found out that if you don't say that in the video, then the algorithm doesn't like that, and it kind of suppresses you. But, yeah. Like I said, I can't predict it, but enough monkeys with typewriters, one of us is bound to figure it out. So, again, say your predictions, tell me what games you're playing, what you think I should be playing down in the comments below, and I'll be sure to check it out at least. Alright, you weirdos. See you next time. Ciao.